Three. Welcome to Common Mansplaining. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Eddie here. That's Christian. Christian, how's it going?
Outstanding.
Fantastic. Look at that. All right. Guys, we are going to talk today about economy and not the normal, typical, boring economy stuff that you're probably used to. We're going to talk about fun economy. Actually, I don't know if there is such a thing.
Spicy economy, yes.
Right. Spicy. We're going to talk about Trump's economy, Trumponomics. I don't even know if that's the proper term, but one of the things that I'm hearing now in the news every day from either one station or the other, like if I hear a station that's amenable with Trump and happy with what he's doing, they're going to say this is the best economy ever, right? And that's what Trump says. He's like, the best economy ever. Never has there ever been an economy like this before, right? And then on the other side of the spectrum, you hear people tell you that it's terrible and that the cost of living is way too high and affordability and blah, 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 blah. And this is a terrible, 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 right? And that's, what's sad is that's actually probably more that has to do with what the economy is than actually the economy, right? Like when people tell you what the economy is doing, it's like that's the real game, right? So like we're going to talk about what it means to even have a good economy and whether or not people actually pay. Truth is, Spartacus, how you doing? Good to have you. The truth is, when people say, it's a good economy, they actually are not actually referencing the economy at all, 99% of the time. What they're talking about is my personal prosperity is good, right? What they mean, like when you go down the street and say, you think the economy is great? Do you think the economy is good? Do you think the economy, they're only answering, am I doing well this month? Right. That's the only question that really matters to anybody, right? Is have I been able to make ends meet? Has my, check to check, week to week living been sufficient? Right. But they're not actually talking about like the CPI is, in target or the unemployed. They don't care about all that. All they care about is how they're doing. Right. So,
Yeah.
and then, no, of course, we have the mainstream media to tell you how you're doing, whether you actually are doing that way or not, right? So that's the
Spin. I mean,
the
I think some of it's cultural too, like how optimistic you are, and this is why we measure consumer confidence, is they're trying to get a sense of the vibe. The real numbers sometimes are delayed, right? You're getting data that are a few months old, so you want to get like, how are people feeling now? There's a
right.
great old Jerry Seinfeld joke about like how two Jewish businessmen. Oh no! Listening to this joke, but the joke is two Gentile businessmen meet and say, "How's business?" And one of them says, "It's great." And the Jews laugh at that because if you ever ask a Jew, two Jews ever ask how's business, it's always, "Oh, it's terrible." Da, 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 da. That was very negative on their outlook. And it's just sort of a cultural thing. It's considered rude to say that business is good or something. You're always supposed to,
Interesting.
the struggle. And so I think, this when we talk about that this economy is great and this economy is tough, those are sort of true at the same time, right?
Right.
That there's opportunity out there. Our unemployment rates are about where they can't really go much lower. They're about where they're supposed to be and things like that. And
Yeah.
there's opportunities, but it's still, there's so many bills to pay. The government has so many taxes for us that
Yay.
it's still a struggle. And it's still, even though this year for me is my best year ever as far as real
Hey,
wages. But,
congratulations.
I had my worst year ever 2 years ago. So, and
Right.
it's like my confidence for the next year is like, who knows? And
Right.
so that sort of clouds, even though this year's been great, my hope for the future, and especially all the taxes I have to pay and all the things, like that struggle is real and those worries are real. And so even when you've got money in the bank now, it's hard to feel that you got everything on lockdown
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, economics, when people think of how the economy is, um, obviously different parts of the country, it's going to go different sectors of the company. If you work for Nvidia right now, you're like, uh, economy's great. Everybody wants to buy our stuff as fast as we can make it,
Right.
but that's not true everywhere. And so I think that's also why both the economy is great and the economy is bad, or can both sort of be true at the same time, and it's so susceptible to spin. And so
Yeah,
we really,
absolutely.
as a common man, need to realize when we're being spun and try to get back to reality.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and right. I think you were saying to me earlier, that people are really just talking about standards of living, right? Like they're talking about the
Yeah.
luxuries they can afford and stuff like that. And people have a tendency to forget that even the most destitute person today in America is like fabulously wealthy compared to anyone anywhere 100 years ago. Like, I read about stories about my kids told me about this guy named Mansa Musa, who was like the richest guy ever to live, supposedly, like adjusted for inflation over time. I mean, he was a long, long time ago, but he was fabulously wealthy and had all these gold reserves and stuff like that. And I'm like, if I had my choice of being me today or being him, I pick me every day of the week. I'm like, I've got a toothbrush. I've got AC. I don't want to go back to where there wasn't air conditioning. Are you nuts? Like, I've got a refrigerator. I've got, like, I
Right.
can go down the street and eat a pizza. What on earth? Like,
Right.
people
I
lose.
think of George Washington, like our wealthiest president. Like if you consider all of his real estate holdings, like he had like basically owned West Virginia. But
Right.
it's like this guy, lived with wooden teeth and died of a common cold because his doctors were just bleeding him to death. And you're like, you're one of the most, you're living at the height of your civilization economically, and you're still like,
Right.
so yeah, I mean, during the Cold War, people from Eastern European countries or something, people would come in and they would see even our poor people in projects had a refrigerator in their house,
Right.
or different things like just glass windows that close tightly, and
Right.
indoor heating, even if there was no AC, was just considered like a really crazy standard of living. And so yes, the 20th century has made us feel entitled to a standard of living that is really unprecedented.
Really? Yeah.
And right through the 1900s and right into the early 20th centuries, there'd be regular boom and bust cycles, right? Cycles of depression and speculation of
Yeah.
things being great. Well, after the Great Depression, we started this John Maynard Keynesian economics, right? Well, it's always been pump priming, but essentially since then, and since World War II, we've always been on an upward stretch. And really, our tough times have been recessions, periods of slow growth,
Right.
not periods of depression where we're dropping.
Right.
Right. But they've been so politically disastrous. Gerald Ford lost really because of bad economics in the 70s. And then Carter lost really because of bad economics in the 80s.
Yep.
And George Herbert Walker Bush, the hero of Desert Storm, who had like 90% approval ratings
Yep.
a year and a half
Which you
before the election, hit this recession and
Yep.
lost. And so politicians are terrified of recessions, of just slow
Oh yeah.
growth. And
Oh yeah.
so we don't really do, right? We've talked about this before, is the John Maynard Keynes School of Economics shows that when times are good, you're supposed to cut spending,
Right.
raise taxes to help pay off those deficits and debts and run a balanced budget. And we don't want to do that because everybody's terrified that they'll have a slow growth period while they're in office and get voted out.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so this is the biggest reason why we're running so much deficits. I think it's short-term thinking and short-term, what is my short-term political gains and
Right.
risks, and
Mhm.
not really kind of like, let's build a healthy social structure where people can succeed and where the balance is budget. It's like if we balance the budget now, there's going to be some things gone without, and that'll cost me in the midterm elections or in the next election. And
Right.
where dictators like China and other places have an advantage is they can put in a 5-year, a 10-year, 25-year, 50-year, 100-year plans, and even though those get tweaked, they can have these long-term outlooks
Right.
that they're supposedly working towards. It's very common in Japan, especially for even businesses to have a 100-year outlook or goal or something like
That'd be
that.
nice. Hey, what's
That
our
we're like, what do our stockholders care about this? You know, this next time we report has
right?
got to be like the best ever. So even our businesses, everything's very short. Now that type of competitiveness has its advantages, but it also, I think, it has some unhealthy things, which is why I think it's why we have such high deficits.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right, right. We're only thinking about like what's how are we going to win the midterms? Let's get it. Like what was it? Biden was asking for like don't raise the gas prices until
Yeah,
just like a couple of just to slide us through that voting cycle. And that's I mean yeah. And part of the problem too is that I think
yeah,
in addition with this, people have a really weird expectation of what the government's role is in economy in the first place, right? Like most people, if there is a bad economy, right? That's if it's like you said, that's the first thing they do is blame the politician, right? And sometimes that's the case, but you'd be surprised how little control the president of the United States has over the economy, right? Like can he do certain things that will affect the economy in different areas? Absolutely, right? Can he, apply pressure here or do this or quantitative easing or quantitative tightening or this, that, and the other and play games with it? Sure. And can he, enact policies that will ultimately be either deflationary or inflationary or will help spur job growth? And so, absolutely. But like, that doesn't mean that the moment a thing happens,
yeah,
it is the president's fault or credit, right?
yeah.
Like classic example, and I'm going to give Biden some credit here because I don't think he was a
Mhm.
good president. He was horrible with the economy, but everybody blames the economy on him. And yes, did he make some errors? Sure. We're going to talk about some of them today. But for the most part, most of the inflation during the Biden era was from like supply blockades due to COVID, right? Most of it. Now, he exacerbated the problem with other bad policy decisions and stuff. And Trump wasn't great during the COVID era either, by the way. Like his little CARES Act was probably maybe the most single like currency supplementing policy ever, which is insane. It was like $6 trillion. It was a lot of money. Anyway,
Yeah.
putting that kind of money in is going to inflate. It's going to inflate prices. So we're going to talk about that, but part of it is I just want to make sure people's expectations of government. But here's my expectation for government in economy. Government is supposed to be present to make it so that I can enable my own prosperity in economy, not so that they can enable my prosperity for me, right? They're supposed to create an environment in which I can thrive, not to make me thrive, right? And so part of the problem is, like when we're talking about standards of living and personal finances, people say, like, hey, do we have a good economy? They literally expect the government to make them do well. And I'm like, that's not really how it works. And when they don't do well, all of a sudden it's the government's fault. Like Biden definitely got voted out, at least mostly because we had a crappy economy, right? And, like I said, a lot of it was his fault, a lot of it wasn't. And yet it really didn't matter. Like it could have been from three presidents before that they still would have been mad at him
Well,
because he was the guy in the
yeah.
seat.
Well,
And
there's this sort of echo boom effect too, like that Trump comes in and starts approving all these permits to drill oil. Okay, none of that oil is going to hit the market for years,
right, right,
right? But so all of a sudden you go out and the next week you get a job when you were jobless before, and you're like, "Great job, Trump."
right,
And he'll take the credit all day. He'll be like, "Yeah, that was all me, yo. My policies and stuff." Well, like the impact of the economy now. I mean, even the right moves can't influence the economy directly.
right.
Um, Now, one of the big things that people look for, I'll just use oil as an example, is they
Please.
like things to just sort of be constant, right?
Yes.
And they'll have the fluctuations be minor, because then you can sort of look forward to
Complain.
the future. You can sort of estimate your costs or your profit. So
Right.
producers would like to know, okay, well, the price of oil, if it's like this for the next year, I can make, some reasonable sort of plans. Same thing with people that consume oil can make those plans. But when
Right.
things are fluctuating all over the place, they have no confidence, right? Then they, all of a sudden they pull back on capital expenditures because they're unsure. That's
Right.
uncertainty. So um, creating policies that help give people more surety, especially that prices will come down or things like that, is generally more stabilizing to the
Right.
economy. That's one thing the government can do rather than have the economy grow or fall or things. They can help it stabilize or people feel more certain. And the one thing that people have tried to lay at Trump's feet is that his tariffs have weakened that certainty quotient, right? They basically are conceding that they haven't led to runaway inflation, but that they have created this environment where business leaders aren't sure what the tariff scenario is going to be and made it difficult for them to make strategic capital decisions
Right.
based
Right.
on that. And so they're kind of punting and waiting for things to be settled, especially like Supreme Court cases having to do with tariffs and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, for all, I have to say, Trump is one who, for all of his strengths and weaknesses, one of his intriguing qualities is that he has kind of evaded economists' analysis, like altogether, no matter what, whether for better or for worse, right? Like they just can't figure him out. They can't figure out what he's doing, why he's doing it, what effect it will have. Like, and every time they say something is going to happen because of something Trump has done, it doesn't. And every time they say something won't happen because of something Trump has done, it does. And I'm like, when are you guys just going to realize you can't predict him, right? And that's, again, that's like you said, that may be a fundamental weakness in an economic situation. But for all of this uncertainty, Trump's numbers are remarkably consistent, right? Like, and we're going to talk about that in a minute too. Like,
Like
unemployment,
unemployment's been pretty consistent.
inflation and job growth and everything is basically stayed, everything stays the same. Now, there's one thing I do want to talk about too before we get into that, and that's kind of the expectation about the word around inflation too, right? So again, what people mean when they say, like, if I were to walk down the street and say, do you like inflation? Right? Like, everyone's going to say no. They're going to say, no, I hate
Yeah.
inflation. That means prices are higher. That means I have to spend more, right? But they don't, if you just go a little bit further, they don't think it through because it's like, well, don't you also work for a business that sells stuff that allows you to get more money so that you can earn more money so that you can, what they really want is to have inflation for them when they're selling something, but not inflation for them when they're buying something, which doesn't really work, right? Like, it's just a factor. Now, I will preface this by saying I don't really think that inflation is absolutely necessary. I think it's kind of an infusion that we've put into our economic system to try to drive growth. I don't know that it always works, but that being said, like, people's understanding of inflation is kind of weird. It's like a very negative connotation when in reality it's just like a cog in the machine.
Well, right. For since Alan Greenspan, the Fed's official goal is to have right around 1%, like plus or
Okay.
minus a ton, right between
Two-ish.
1 and 2%
Yeah.
inflation year, right? Seeing that the economy is growing is gonna, you can't stop that, but you don't want it to become where people are noticing price rises in a dramatic
Right.
fashion.
Right. That's like the frog in boiling. Have you ever do that
Yeah.
experiment? I didn't ever do it. It was animal cruelty by the time I was coming up. But apparently, if you put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump out and be like, oh God, that's hot. But if you put a frog in like lukewarm water and then slowly crank up the heat, it won't notice until the poor frog has met
It's
its end.
good. Yeah.
And so humans are the same way, right? Like, if I worked for convenience stores for a long, long time. If we cranked up our gas prices by like 10 cents a gallon, people would lose their mind and just stop buying gas, right? But if I cranked it up by two and then two and then two and then two, I could raise it like 30 cents before anybody really started saying, man, these gas prices are really high, because they just don't notice that gradual shift, right? So that's one of those things. All right. So let's start talking a little bit about where we actually are in this economy, right? Not what people's personal finances are, but what the actual economy is doing, right? So, like I said, Trump's numbers are relatively consistent, right? He's had very good GDP growth since he took over in January, right? Basically, it's been right around that like 3% zone, which is kind of like, and for a lot of these, let me just say this. They're like target rates that you don't want to have like too high, you don't want to have too low, right? So, yes, would it be great if our GDP growth was like 50%? Sure, but that would probably mean something is wrong, right? So like he's been hitting these target zones, right? And one of the things that people will whine about, like for example, his inflation is slightly above the target, right? It's like 3%, 2.53% instead of 2%. But it's like it's just so close and that it's so minimal, right? That it just doesn't register much on the economic scale. And wage growth is bigger than inflation and has been since Trump took over. That's one of his biggest successes, right? And so what people actually feel, not that it's a perfect correlation, but what people actually feel is when wage growth is less than inflation, like the prices of stuff is going up higher than your pocketbook is because you're getting a salary, right? Then you feel like prices are too expensive and you can't afford them. But if wage growth exceeds inflation, which it has been ever since Trump has been in office, then it's going to feel as we go through time and that trend continues, it's going to feel more and more like you're under control, like you can afford the prices that you have to pay. That's called the consumer price index, right? And so Trump has been very successful there. One of the things that I hear people whine about is this inflation. It's like it almost doesn't matter what that inflation number is if the wage growth number is greater than it, right? Like a 2% inflation with a 3% wage growth is basically the same as a 3% inflation with a 4% wage growth. People,
All
I
right,
mean,
all right.
not perfectly,
Well,
but like,
all right. Let me push back gently with
yeah,
what the spinners, the anti-Trumpers, are saying. They're calling this. Have you heard the term a K-shaped, uh, um, a K-shaped economy?
I haven't heard this. No.
Right. So a K-shape. Imagine the letter K
Yep.
is that some people are going up and other people are going down at the
Ah,
same
yes.
time.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
Fair enough.
That wealthy people are doing well. That all the wage growth is driven by wealthy people, and
Yep.
that the poor are in struggleville even more. Right. So this is a way of managing expectations things
Yeah.
because right, wage growth is a macro stat. And so trying to break that down that uh the all the wage growth is Elon Musk's
Of course. All
incentive
him.
laden contract. Yeah. Right. It's not right, but that doesn't mean the individuals, right? That we can find individuals that are having a hard time in this economy, right? We can find
Right.
individuals that are having doing very well in this economy.
Yep.
The one area that, and I sent you an article, and we'll post it up here, that everybody kind of agrees is the struggle is housing.
Yes.
It's down, and I'm trying to sell my house, and that's the one area that I would really like
They're like, come
the
on.
Fed to lower interest rates to boost housing, so I could sell my house, right? But that other sectors, so even if other sectors are doing well, like it's possible others are not, and so we have such a diversified economy, and that uh, somebody, even a very educated person like Thomas Jefferson or like um, Karl Marx, were to see the breadth of our and size of our 21st century 2025 economy,
Yeah.
you know
There's
it
a lot of
would
people.
it has evolved in ways that there's no way they could have anticipated, and layers
Right.
of middle management and other ways to find efficiencies and to find things and
Oh yeah.
to bring prosperity and adapt and innovate and to drive innovation and the technological leaps, right? Those are the things that you can't account for, you can't predict, right? When everybody freaks out about population rise and how are we going to feed these people, da, 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 well, they don't anticipate how technology is going to change things,
Right.
right?
Right. And
And
they don't.
so, yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, they also underestimate the power of the like entrepreneur in this day and age, especially with like all of the different avenues. I mean, look at us; we're going to be fabulously wealthy and successful podcasters. I mean, I would love to someday. We're not there yet, but I mean,
yeah.
that avenue is open to people, right? Like,
Mhm.
every day I hear about somebody who's like going to open up their own spa or is going to do start their own TikTok channel or something like that, and that avenue is available to everyone. And not only that, like all of these like little entrepreneurships and these little projects that people can do on the side are a neat way for like the market to sort of correct itself. So if there is somebody at the top who's making a lot of money, they can self redistribute this money into, you know, the entertainment that they like, into other things like that. And they almost always do. And one of the things that I'll say, you know, obviously it's not right to covet somebody else's possessions. So if somebody's making a lot more money than you and is doing something right, you know,
And they're doing it legally, right?
right, right. As long as they're doing it legally and
Honestly,
preferably
yeah.
ethically, right? Honestly,
Mhm.
right? Then you can't just go around being like, oh, he's got money and I don't. Win. Like, get up off your
He
butt and get
doesn't
it yourself.
deserve it. Nobody,
Right.
nobody should be that successful.
Right. And
He made a
I'm
hit.
not
He made a
saying
hit. Right.
I want to really quick while we're on this topic. I want to like squash something that I hear from the left all the time. Nobody that I know wants anyone to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. By the way, that saying is not something that people on the right use. That's a saying that people on the left use to make fun of people on the right who just tell people to go, you know, get themselves in gear. I'm not saying that you don't have bootstraps. Everyone has bootstraps to use, right? We all have assets. We all have some level of education, even if it's limited for some people. We all have some type of ability, some type of talent, something that we can leverage, some friend that we can talk to, some, you know, join the United States military. There's always an option. It's not yourself that you always have to use to like pull yourself up by. There's always all these environmental conditions that you can use to your advantage. Nobody is saying that you just have to like magically do better, right? Like it's like a classic thing that I hear from the left. Is like we're all just telling you to just do better magically without any ability to do so. You all have the ability to do so. The only time that you don't is like the people that like have mental illnesses and stuff like that. That's in those rare situations, right? That's when I would be okay with the community helping out if they choose to, right? And also, like, okay, I don't want to go on too many tangents. Anyway,
Well. I just want to say really quick, like to go from Struggleville, like really hard bus times two, some changes, and now all of a sudden all your needs are met, and you're hitting, you're fabulously wealthy. Those are exceedingly rare. In fact, those are
right,
dramatic stories that become movies, right?
right,
And really, it's incremental changes, incremental
yes,
improvement. Your experience builds upon and expands you, gives you greater opportunities for economic success because of what you've done earlier, right? It's rare that you go from boom and nothing incremental has changed. Now all of a sudden my life has changed like this. That sort of hitting the lottery is a fable. And I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's rare and it's dramatic. Normal people, right? It's everyday incremental improvement in their experience, their skills, their associations that they give them greater opportunities that they didn't have before. And that's just, it's not sexy, but it's a real. It's why people in their 40s tend to make more than people fresh out of college. They just have more
right.
experience and more things to bring that.
So yeah, Carl is saying, I don't know, I don't know if he's threatening me, but guys, just try to keep it civil. You know, if you're going to be in chat, just try to keep it civil. You don't have to like everything I say, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody's making you like stuff. And no, I'm not going to go out and fight anybody, Carl. So like, I'm a very peaceful guy. Do I know how to defend myself? Sure, but that's not an invitation to a brawl, okay, guys. So like, just, you know, find some peace in your heart. Find some. I care about you guys. I care about everybody in my chat. I care about you. I love you guys. I think all humans have value. So I'm not going to go out and fight people. But anyway, but I do appreciate that you're here, even though you may not, you know, agree with our opinions. That's fine. It's perfect. As a matter of fact, we like people who disagree with us to come on and give us constructive, you know, feedback, constructive things to say. So please do. Like if
Good.
you're here,
Yeah.
you've got
Give
something
us
you
a
want to say,
super
let us
chat
know.
and we'll talk about your topic. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
you know,
We'll go on
I
a
think
5 minute tangent.
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think with the economy, yeah, economics is personal. But when politicians can speak to that, right? Clinton, it's I feel your pain. You know, we was talking about the recession and the uncertainty and the confidence that it dropped. And that he was going to, try to do it. Now, his policy of tax and spend wasn't the right policy for that. Ultimately, when he adopted conservative economic principles and a balanced budget, we started to pull out of this recession and see prosperity. But people want to speak to this person cares, at least at a minimum. And so part of the thing is ever since then, politicians or people have tried to define, hey, things are tough, but I understand. I'm going to try to, my best intentions are to improve you.
Right.
And so I feel like the economy can be a little bit of a way to manipulate people.
Oh yeah.
Right? That obviously our domestic concerns, unless we're in a big shooting war with somebody, foreign policy is second
Should
to,
take a back seat. Right.
yeah, to groceries and things that the common man care about. So I
Absolutely.
get
So I
that,
want to.
but sorry.
No, yeah, good. I wanted to address something that Rob said. Rob said that if the October jobs report came out, it would contradict the claim that jobs are exploding. They know the inflation report would not support the talking point that prices are falling. So, a couple things on that. The inflation report did come out, and actually, the inflation was better than the target, better than the expectation. Right? It was like 2.6%. Anyway, it was better than they were expecting. So, and not only that, the job losses. So, the most recent job.
I was reviewing the September numbers. You have the
Yeah.
October numbers? I think he's
So
talking
no,
about
yeah,
that October hasn't come out yet, right?
right, right. So this is what the funny thing though is I've heard that exact same thing for August and
Yeah.
September. And like people keep saying that over and over again. It's like as soon as the August numbers come out, why are they hiding the August numbers? And it's like they're not. And by the way, I'm sure they can fudge these numbers too, right? Like if they really
The
wanted to.
government was shut down. That's the other thing I want to talk about before we say.
Okay, sure, sure.
The government can influence things. It's through these shutdowns, right?
Yes.
And the Democrats, right, showed that this was they did this nakedly for politics. They wanted to have some tough economics because as soon as the election was over, they ended the shutdown, right? And
Right.
so they said that there is going to be like a 0.01 point of growth or something that can be recovered because of that shutdown, right?
Right.
So the government can manipulate for the worst, right?
Yep.
Things like this with the shutdown, and they will do it for political advantage. And it was just nakedly done by the Democrats. I think we should
Yep.
call that out. But
Yeah.
the numbers for September, even in spite of the shutdown, are not as bad as they were seeming. Right, the Fed says they would like inflation to be at 2% before they'll drop rates any higher. That was a little bit higher than that. Things like that. The unemployment rate, even though jobs were stronger than they were, was still actually went up because more people were seeking jobs. But nobody's using terms like exploding or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Never heard that
We're
either.
seeing,
Right.
if you look at these charted over times, the unemployment rate's very consistent. A little bit up this month. Because more people are seeking jobs. But the more people got jobs than were expected. That was sort of the pleasant bump for September.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's like you said, these have been relatively consistent numbers. And yeah, nobody's saying that jobs are explode. I don't know. Well, now to be fair, Trump might be saying that. I'll give you that.
Okay.
Like Trump is always going to say the most maximalist thing, right? He's not going to use words like steady growth, right? He's going to say growth like
Constancy,
you've
yeah.
never seen before and blah blah blah. So you got and I mean
His job numbers are
I almost
huge. Huge.
yeah, never before has there been jobs like I almost feel bad, like I shouldn't have to say this, but Democrats, if you haven't learned by now to kind of just temper Trump's rhetoric with a grain of salt a little bit, then you're just not catching up to the bare bones politics of this is what Trump says. This is just what he does, and it's not
And the
like it's
common man understands it. They
and
don't
I
need
look
you to fact check it and be like, oh, no,
right.
no, 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 no. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like what Trump said this is the best job growth ever. I can actually point to 3 times in the last decade where it was higher. It's like, oh my God. Like seriously,
Yeah.
that's what you're going to spend your time on. And I feel bad that I have like on the one side, I'm ashamed that I have to translate what my president is saying, right? Because I shouldn't have to. He should find rhetoric that's, you know, adult enough to communicate to people. But by the same token, I feel ashamed that I should have to translate this to someone too, because everybody should know what Trump is saying. It's not that complicated. He's saying we're doing good. That's it, right? Like that's all he's saying, right? He constantly says we're doing great, and it's honestly, no spin, no propaganda. We're doing fine. Is it the best economy ever? Has there never been an economy like this before? No. It's about average. It's pretty solid. It's like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
give it above average, right? Like I
do
give it
you,
above average.
yeah, like do you order appetizers with your meal more often or as much as you would like to now? I mean, there's so many sort of like weird things. It's like if I still have to, drink 2% instead of whole because it saves me 10 cents a
Yeah,
gallon or something like
I
that.
still
Look,
can't get the organic.
you know, we can all our personal finances, right? This is a free country. We let people manage their personal finances, and um, we don't judge, and people make different choices, and a lot of times people's prosperity are a result of them making better choices than others.
Sure.
So this is why coveting other people's things, you don't know the struggle, the sacrifices they made to get those. Somebody
Absolutely.
with a nice house, you might covet that, but you don't know, maybe they're paying 85%, of their, and they're living on peanut butter and jelly sandwiches,
Right.
and not doing going on any trips or doing anything fun to have that house, right?
Right.
And you just make different choices, right? And that's one of the things. Like, I like to spend more time with my family, so maybe I could make more money if I didn't do that, but that's a choice that I make.
Right.
So we allow people to do that. We don't want the government dictating that type of thing. Like, hey, we need this kind of production level. It's like master planning. That's the Soviet style. Master planning. We need this much labor hours to meet these sort of month-end production goals and yada yada yada, and go and do it. We're treated like adults here, but there's also accountability with that. If we don't live up to that, we're going to be in struggleville.
Right, right, and like, yeah, it's. I mean, this is. So just to give you guys the rundown, all right, unemployment's right about where it's supposed to be. Actually, it's probably maybe slightly better than it's supposed to be. Inflation is a little bit high, like maybe 1% high, possibly due to tariffs, maybe due to a couple of other market factors too. But uh, uh, housing and electricity are probably the two like driving inflation to be slightly higher than normal. But there are counterweights too. One of the things that Trump's done very well is he's controlled the price of gas, right? And so
Coming
shipping
down.
costs are reduced. And yeah, and so there's a lot of things that have one thing I think Trump is doing is that he's kind of running what would have been a slightly better than average ship across the board so that he can do tariffs. It's kind of a neat like counterbalance. It's like a strategy because he knows that tariffs represent at least a certain amount of pain to the consumer, right? Which is why he had to bail out the farmers. And I mean, just so those of you listening, I still hate tariffs. I've never liked them. I never will. But again, for principled reasons, I do see why Trump is doing it. And I understand what he's hoping to accomplish. And it bears asking, has he accomplished that? Right. So let's go through it. I think that consumer spending is up in America. He has gotten lots of investment commitments from around the world in various businesses to come spend money to develop in America and increase manufacturing and increase production and increase.
Industry, yeah.
Absolutely. He's gotten a lot of people to like start buying domestically instead of buying abroad because it's cheaper here now all of a sudden because everything else is too expensive because of the tariffs, right? So he is in fact generating this domestic consumership, which is what he was hoping to do from day one. And he's also buying us a more fair market, right? Like one of the other things that came across this last month as better than expected was the trade deficit, the trade balance, right? So like it was like 58 billion instead of like they were expecting it to be 62 billion underwater or whatever. And like it's not like underwater like we're losing money, but it's still it would be perfect if we were like, closer to or had a trade balance
Surplus.
in the positive. Yeah, that'd be nice. But yeah, so like he's accomplishing the things he's hoping to accomplish, and most of them are good things. Another thing that he's accomplishing is the protectionist side of his goal, which is to like keep things like steel, aluminum, semiconductor chips here. Like he's trying to keep some of the things that we would need to have, gasoline and stuff available to us at all times so that we're not reliant on anyone else to have those products in case of emergencies, in case of a war, in case of a supply block or something like that. So he's accomplishing his goals. I
Yeah,
gotta say,
and people now because of the strategic um, strategy that he's put in place in this emphasis, people are taking the time. They found deposits of rare earths in Utah and Wyoming that they're looking to exploit. Things like that's where we've been dominated by China. Now we won't see the impact of that for years, right? And one of them is we may not see the impact unless we get in a shooting war with China or things like that. But so that we don't have these supply chain chokes that we've had before, it's just sort of preventing that, so we can have that boring consistency, even if they're in the midst of chaos. I think, and that sort of quality, that's a social structure that he's trying to create. So where prosperity can take place, it's going to take years to create,
yep,
and it's sort of like when you buy insurance. Everybody hates buying insurance because you don't
right,
get anything tangible, and if nothing goes wrong, you feel like you wasted that money or things like that. So, like if China caves and stops being a belligerent jerk, and we can get cheap rare earths from them, then it's
I
like, well,
agree.
why do we have to develop all this stuff here? But it's like, well, we need the insurance. It's just smart policy. Living without insurance or without thinking about an alternative to this
Yep,
puts us in a vulnerable spot. So it's just sort of mature governing. And so
maybe.
I applaud that, even if the economic results aren't immediate, or even if they're short term, means that there are supply chain hiccups or rare earths become temporarily more expensive. That should just that spike in their price is what will drive entrepreneurs to all of a sudden get their butts out into parts of Utah, Nevada, and Wyoming and take some samples and find out if they can make some money, right?
Yeah,
And
they can think about it.
you know,
So one thing Spartacus says tariffs are a tax, and I'm not a fan of a president acting like a king and imposing taxes. Taxes are supposed to go through Congress. Also, it's illegal to do it. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot in that one statement. And one thing, like I said, is I do think that the president does have the technical power to employ tariffs. I think that is a tool that he is legally allowed to wield. Now, that doesn't make it the right thing to do or the best thing to do, but he's doing it, and it seems to be having some of the effects that he was hoping for, right? Not everybody's going to agree with what he's shooting for, but it's doing what he wanted, which is to get some stuff back here to America and put us back on the map as far as a manufacturing powerhouse, which is what made us the strongest nation on earth in the first place, right? Like because we were the premier manufacturing powerhouse, right? The reason we were able to easily win World War II was because nobody could match up to our industrial might, and still can't, even though we need to recover. So anyway, but the other thing too is I do agree that he should involve Congress with more of his unilateral decisions. Like I would love it if the president would just get, because like Christian was talking about earlier in the night, a lot of these economic decisions are made very short term, right? On a very short leash. And Trump is making a lot of these by fiat, by executive order, and they're only as good as long as he's president. And the next person's going to slide in and they're just going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to write this executive order which says undo all of Trump's executive orders." And then it's going to be gone. And so I wish he would just go to Congress and say, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. It's working, by the way. Let me show you that it's working. And would you please sign this into law?" I don't know why he doesn't do that more often for almost all of his executive orders.
well, oh yeah, I mean, Mike Johnson. There's a lot of things like why a lot of these positions that we have 70% approval, these sort of common sense things aren't being enacted into law. Why we aren't just doing that on a case by case basis, just to put the Democrats on record. Um, we'll
Yeah,
see. Maybe that'll happen in the next term, next year, prior to the run up. But yeah, tariffs. The president has to deal with foreign countries. That's dealing with foreign countries is the executive's power. It's
right.
not anybody else's power. So while he's negotiating, yeah, creating tariffs, but once the negotiation has been reached, Yes, that should go to Congress, and they should vote on it. And I think the Supreme Court, which has the case ahead of them now, will kind of agree with that. If you want to, as a president, put in that while you're negotiating, put in tariffs while you're negotiating actively with the country, do that. But once you start an agreement, let Congress ratify that agreement, so it will continue on. You have an expectation. Businesses have an expectation of what those tariffs are going to be um, once Congress has ratified and made it law.
Right, right. So Rob says, as of mid 2025, there are roughly 415,000 manufacturing job openings that remain unfilled in the United States. These are positions employers have posted but have not yet filled. Well, as of mid 2025, many of them have been filled actually by this point, but even that number was just a function of, I mean, we're adding manufacturing jobs, and that's a good thing, right? Like adding jobs is creating opportunity for people, and the fact that our unemployment number has remained relatively static should show that people are filling those positions as they come up. I mean, that's just, and our population is growing in America for the first time since, like, well, it was definitely slowing very rapidly, and it's finally now starting to shoot back up, which is another side note to, like, yay trade. But to be fair, it did start, like, I think right at the end of Biden's presidency. So I'm just happy the population going back up. So I'll give
Now
credit
I
where
want to talk about something. The article in there was about it. What do you think has been the net economic impact of Trump's immigration policies? And a lot of people want to paint that they've been bad. Have we? The metrics on a macro level don't seem to be reflecting negative impacts to the economy because of the immigration crackdown on illegals. What are your opinions on that?
Yeah, it's mixed. I mean, obviously, it's a disruption to the economy. But that having been said, like, I think a lot of Trump's goals are actually which is weird for Trump too, because I don't think of him as a long-term planner, but they are actually long-term, like, executions. They're supposed to be like, this is going to hurt for a little while, but in a year it's going to come out, or it's going to hurt for a little while, but in 10 years it's going to come out. I'm surprised to see that a lot of his plans are more long term, or at least with an eye toward the future. I will say that obviously by deporting illegal immigrants, it opens jobs, which is going to improve wages, which is going to give us more opportunity for job growth, which is going to, I think it's going to do a lot of things. But in the short term, I think it's probably going to have a slightly negative effect. It's definitely going to impact relations abroad on occasion, and if obviously it's going to make Democrats upset, which is almost worth it by itself, right? Like, it's like, woo, that's worth it right there.
Well, guys, I think the last I had seen was over 1.6 million self deportations.
Yep.
So, of people leaving voluntarily on their own, they get $1,000 if they do that type of thing. Yeah, and that like how that's going to impact. Right. One of the things they talked about was when Trump started doing the immigration sweeps in Los Angeles, traffic got a lot better. There was, when people that were worried about being stayed home, right? But there's a very real impact to having less gridlock traffic in Los Angeles,
Right.
right? And having not as much pressure on rental, income or rental prices because there are fewer illegals, things like that. Some of those benefits we're going to see down the line. But in the short term, we haven't seen the negatives, even to things they warn about, like farming or construction, or things like if we don't have, that they cried about, if we don't have this, unfettered mass illegal immigration, our economy can't function. They're doing jobs Americans don't want to do. That has proved to be a fallacy, but
Yeah,
there
definitely.
has been some disruptions. Now, when they came through North Carolina here, there were people who, legal residents or legal permitted immigrants who had legal rights to work here, who abstained from work, like during that, like as sort
Right.
of a protest or solidarity, and there was some disruption. Um, and so now I've heard that the Democrats are trying to start a thing saying that the wealthy Democrats should abstain from consumption because they don't want to give good stats to the Trump economy. That they
Wow.
think if they stop buying couches or new refrigerators or whatever, like durable goods,
Wow.
especially for until the midterms or something like that, that they can have a negative effect on the economy. Um, so
See,
I think
this
it's
is
kind of cute, but yeah. I
this
mean,
is this.
I'm like, yes, reduce consumption will help us reduce inflation. That's the big thing. I'm like, if prices are too high, don't buy stuff. If you
I
don't
mean,
need stuff, don't buy stuff.
this is what drives me nuts about politics, right? And it's not just Democrats that do it, but golly, if you are finding yourself in a situation where you want to see America fail, even temporarily, so that your side can win, then you are lost, my friend. You are like what was it? Bill Maher was like, "Oh God, I hope Trump's economy tanks so that he won't get reelected again." Like,
Yeah.
guys, if you're
I'll never
rooting for
forgive him
America
for
to
that.
fail,
It's the most unpatriotic, un-American thing ever.
I mean, what was it? Okay, when Elon Musk's rocket blew up, they were like the left was cheering. They're like, "Yay! An American company's rockets blew up! Yay!" Like, wow. Like, if you guys, take a look in the mirror. If you are literally cheering that somebody's stuff blew up,
Did not
someone who,
succeed. Yeah.
I mean, and I get, and look, I want to give the left the credit because it's like you said, this K-shaped economy is a thing, right? And so the way that we tackle this, the rich get richer and the poor, first of all, the rich are going to get richer forever. That's just how it is, right? First
But
of all,
a
and I'm
rising
not
tide
a,
can raise all boats too, right?
yeah, yeah. Now, but that being said, the way to manage that is, I believe, is through regulation, right? Like, I'm not a guy for socialist redistribution of wealth, but I do believe in regulation to manage the market so that it stays competitive, right? I don't think that anybody should have we have like antitrust laws for a reason, right? I don't believe that somebody should just be able to like skyrocket their wealth into the stratosphere and never get caught. I think that there should be competition among, and I think there's lots of different ways to do that. I don't think that anybody should be able to like muscle out the rest of their competitors so that they can't, operate in that space. And I think that as long as we have a steady, like fair platform upon which everyone can compete, I think that the market will be fine, even if some do better than others. And guys, if you're looking for, there never to be a winner, right? For there never to be someone that does better than others, you just don't understand human, psychology. We're going to compete. Some of us are going to outcompete others. That's just how it is, and it's how it always will be. Even if you were to like magically level every single person's assets, make every single person's income the same, by the way, I would be one of the ones who would almost immediately jump ahead because they would come gamble with me. Like they would come do things with people are going to change, trade on the side. They're going to like, run numbers. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. They're going to like start. There's a million reasons why it doesn't work. You just cannot create a society where everyone is like flat.
Well, and I'm imagining, right? So Elon Musk. So you're cheering Elon Musk failure, right? Now he's got plenty of competition. There's tons of electric cars out there. Tesla is not the only car company. But when you do comparison tests, when people go and you have to spend your hard-earned money and you drive different electric cars, people over and over again say the Tesla is far and away the best electric car, right?
Yeah.
And so, there's going to be, oh, I wish all cars were the same, electric cars were the same quality, right? You want them to be competing, trying to becoming better and better and better. And they have to raise their game. Electric car company today has to make sure that they've got something that can compete that's better than or offers some quality that Tesla doesn't. Or else they got no reason being in business.
Yeah. Now
So
I'll give it this. Like one thing that I wish we could manage, and I don't know if there's a way to regulate this, but there are lots of companies out there that, for example, could make a better product but don't because it's just cost effective, right? They're trying to find that sweet spot, right? And like there's cars out. Yeah, I remember when I was growing up, cars got like 50 miles to a gallon, right? Like you can get a nice little Toyota, a Tercel
yeah,
and just like zoom around, like just never run out of
Honda
gas. Right?
CRX, yeah. Yeah.
Right. But nowadays it's like, that they've kind of tapered that back down to like 20, 30 miles a gallon because I guess because they just don't have to make it that well. But that's
Well,
kind of weird. Like I wish.
the laws of physics said if you got in an accident in that Tercel in the Honda CRX, you were going to die.
Yeah, that's
And
fair.
they essentially felt that legislating where the incentives were to make cars that small was inhumane, and
Yeah,
that people want to drive SUVs. People
I guess.
when Americans are given a free choice, they like SUVs because of the safety perception.
I
Right? If
hate
they
them.
have families, they call them a family vehicle, even though they're less economical, right? They're harder to park and all these things like that.
And
They
they're
feel
less
more safe,
maneuverable.
and the laws of physics are on their side.
Yeah,
When they're in an accident,
to an
they
extent.
have well, yeah.
One thing
When
that
you're in an
one thing that
accident with similar sized vehicles, when you're in
yeah,
the
but here's the
smallest
thing.
one, yeah.
Here's the thing. When you have a more maneuverable vehicle, you are less likely to be in that accident. Right? I guarantee you that there are very like a ton of potential accident situations that if I were in my Nissan Versa, I would avoid every single time. But if I'm instead in a Tundra, there's no way I'm avoiding it. It's like it's gonna slip. And yeah, I'll probably be fine after I get into that accident. I might run over whoever it was that I was gonna hit, but like instead, I mean, part of the safety is in the maneuverability and the reaction, of the vehicle itself, the ability for it to like stopping distance. The stopping distance of a Tercel is very, very short. The stopping distance of a giant, Escalade, not very good. Like there's a
Right,
lot
yeah.
of
I
things
mean,
that go into it. But yeah, I get it.
there are
I
no
get it.
solutions, only trade-offs. But American people, right, given their why there's so few sedans being made right now, is they've overwhelmingly chose they like higher driving SUVs for whatever, for the utility, for the grand clearance, for the feel, for the vibe. We'll see if that changes, but the government's kind of allowed people to do that. Trump has removed the penalties for not meeting the mileage compliance, and so that's going to
Yeah.
free up. Um,
Yeah. Now he has
we'll see some stuff. Yeah.
one thing that he has done is he's deregulated a lot of industry, which should promote some economic growth. Now, that being said, again, I don't want to create a situation where that deregulation leads to like the lack of competition, right? As long as it doesn't do that, I'm fine. But if it ever creates obviously Trump, the perception on the left is that Trump is doing this to help his rich buddies make extra money, and it does save them some money, sure, because there's a lot of compliance things that they really never should have had to meet, like a lot of EPA garbage and. But in any case, ultimately, as we're wrapping up, I think that what I want people to take away from this is that having a good economy does not mean that your personal finances are great, right? You're going to have to work on your own personal finances. Not It's not like Trump's job to give you good personal finances, right? It's Trump's job to create a situation in which your personal finances can thrive. That's it. So like don't look to Trump to solve your life's problems. Solve your life's problems and then look to Trump to make it so that you can solve your life's problems.
Yeah, I would just add to the common man. There's a classic old story in business of a guy, immigrant, didn't really read the papers, didn't really know about depression, and he just started a company. It was either a shoe company or like a soup company or something. And because he hadn't heard that it was such a terrible time to start a business because of this depression. He just did it and he just worked his butt off and made it successful. And so, I think people worry too much about, the buzz or the Wall Street Journal or the elites say now's a good time to start a business, or now the economy is good for doing this. Don't
Right.
rely on elites, be entrepreneurial. You can succeed, you can
Yep.
fail in a good economy, you can succeed in a bad one.
Yep.
If your products are good, getting something that's a hit is not a guarantee, and it's
Right.
usually a sign of hard work and shrewd acumen. And we don't punish people that do that. And we shouldn't covet their success. I would say
Absolutely.
this too, in just closing that, your government is not going to determine whether the economy is good or bad.
I really am.
These are things that you can use to express your dissatisfaction with your politicians, um, is your dissatisfaction over it. But these are macro forces now, and our economy is so large and so sophisticated now. Their impact really should just be to stop fraud, right, and allow our interactions internationally to be appropriate, and give us a chance to succeed, and not hold us back, right? As long as the
Absolutely.
government doesn't hold us back, I
That's
feel
it.
like America can do well.
That's it. Absolutely. All right, guys. That's all for this week. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and share it with everybody you know. We do this every Thursday, every Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll catch you next time on Common Mansplaining.
Keep it coming.
Keep it coming.